I always knew I was different. I grew up in the country, just outside of a small town called Prince George. The house I grew up in was originally a trailer that my dad had built on over the years, and the yard was filled with gardens that my mom and I had made. I had one brother, 3 years younger than I, but other than that, I had no one my age in my area, so I grew up on my own basically. I was a shy, quiet kid that entertained myself with reading and art. When I was about 15 years old, I started to realize and accept the fact that I liked other boys. And it was about this time that I started to look around for information on my new take on sexuality. Except, there was none. Coming out in a small, rural town, even to myself, was difficult. But it was a small step in the uphill battle to define myself.
I lived in Colombia all of my life. I never traveled, visited, or exposed myself to other cultures before coming to Canada. However, 5 years after I was born, in 1992, I was doing my second favorite activity as a child. I was watching this television program about traveling around the world. My imagination used to go wild. I dreamt of adventuring in Egypt, Africa, and Italy. I dreamt of eating different types of food, of speaking different languages. Ever since then, I promised myself that I will eventually travel and see the world, that I will one day live outside of Colombia. I gotta say that dreams do come true. Not exactly how you will expect them to, but true all the same. When I first came to Canada, on October 3rd, 2000, the last thing in my mind was the need for adventure. And what I wanted the most was to be able to go back and be with my family and to feel included again. The thought of never stepping in my land again and never seeing my family again was scary. But even scarier was what I was about to face.
I realized I was different from the other boys at school. I didn't like girls like other guys I knew did, and I didn't follow the norm for being a guy. I was always called names as a kid, but what kid hasn't been teased? I was called gay one day, and I had no idea what it meant or how it could be wrong. I had always heard it around, and I knew it as a negative word. So I asked someone, and they told me it was when two guys have sex. I was so confused. I had only heard it used in a negative manner. And then it hit me. Oh crap, I'm gay.
I started school 6 months after arriving in Canada because the Spanish multicultural workers were cut that year. So there was no one to show me which school to go to, or no one who will be able to translate for me and my parents. During those months, before I entered school, I wasted all of my time watching television. It is very difficult to enjoy television when you can't understand a single thing of what they're saying. I felt lonely, but I was safe. Safe was a feeling that I wouldn't be able to feel again until much after. At school, I was mentally and physically hurt by my classmates. They made fun of me because I didn't speak English. The situation got to the point where I felt that I wasn't gonna be able to take it anymore.
It was so frustrating not being able to find support or information on this new definition of me. And it made me feel even more anxious when all I kept hearing is how bad being queer was. I began to feel alone. Like I was the only person that felt this way. I was a freak. A pervert. I was wrong.
You are inconsistent. You cannot be programmed. You are inconsistent. You cannot be programmed. You are inconsistent. You cannot be programmed. You are inconsistent. You are inferior. You are inconsistent.
I found others like me in my community. This helped me get deeply involved in the queer community and working with youth. I still had a lot of questions. So I went to workshops, researched, and took on mentors. And eventually I traveled to Vancouver for a queer youth conference. While in Vancouver, I fell in love with it. And I eventually moved there, feeling it had the room I needed to grow. Coming to Vancouver from a small town was exciting and terrifying at the same time. In Prince George, I knew where to go if I needed support. Here, I was lost.
I was fed up with everything that was going on. And just when it seemed that I was reaching my breaking point, I met two people that transformed my life entirely. They were two youth my age, also from Colombia. And through them, I met a lot of new people. And all of a sudden, the school didn't seem so bad after all. I was finally getting out there in the city and getting to know new programs and resources. And amongst them was Immigrant Services Society, and a program that they were starting called Multicultural Youth Circle, which was a program created to help immigrant refugee youth support other youth like them. I was fortunate enough to be accepted into it, and I got the opportunity to meet people that had gone through similar situations as I had. They taught me not to be a victim, but to do something about it, and be a mentor for my peers.
I finally met the right people, and through them, I was able to connect with various organizations that linked me into queer Vancouver. Before, I was working in sexual health so I could be safe and healthy. Now I'm doing it so other youth feel empowered, to know that change is possible, and they are the masters of their own body, that they don't have to be lost.
Only one spirit, and you and I shall become part of that spirit, that energy that makes the sun rise in the east and sets in the west. Whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not, you shall become part of that spirit.
When you let go Put your hand in mine.
Steps. The sacrifice for living's a small blank check. The process of action lost in what happened. Too many questions, not enough answers. Reaction too slow. Anti-cancerous flow. I flow, let go of ego. Cause people shoot needles with lethal doses of hopeless. Hoping to cope with dreams broken and stolen. Atonement is found in the moment you open your heart. It's like we've chosen the dark, letting this world fall apart. Full of surprises, disguises, missing your.
Pursuing what I wanted to do and sort of progressing at my own level created confidence in me that has, drastically changed and improved my life.
Makes you feel happy inside, so it gives you a positive outlook.
It's not one of these things that there's typical boundaries on. It's an artistic expression.
If you're physically active, if your imagination and your creativity are sparked and you're feeling good about yourself, that reflects on your community.
You learn a sense of accomplishment, you learn the value of putting in work, you learn so much through skateboarding. I think skateboarders have an unfair advantage in life because of what we learn from the sport.
People treat me different when I'm on a skateboard. It's really odd.
People, might not think that, you're as educated as you are, you're not as, outgoing as you are, you don't have a job, stuff like that. Unfortunately, there's always those stigmas.
It kind of makes me angry because they're almost stereotyping me.
The problem with it is that depending on the materials and the ownership, it's going to annoy people and result in security guards, police, and all that.
Downtown one day, I was just tackled by a police officer out of the blue, from behind actually, and put in a hammerlock and arrested for skateboarding on the sidewalk.
There isn't anywhere to skateboard in this community, and there isn't anything for kids to do.
I think we could continue on the way we are, and we could have a sketchy skate park, and we could have, kids riding down side streets all over the place and riding ledges in front of buildings and things, and being yelled at and being escorted off the property by security guards and, just essentially being marginalized. And I think, if we're going to do that to youth who are really not doing anything wrong or bad, what are we sending them as a message? Are we sending them the message that, we support you and we're willing to keep up with you and stay on top of what you want to do and show enthusiasm for that? Or are we telling them that what their interests and their passions are is worthless? I don't think that's the kind of message we want to be sending to our youth.
This phrase will come instantly into your consciousness.
Vancouver is really a mecca for skateboarding in the world. We've got 30 or more free skate parks in Greater Vancouver.
The whole skate community is usually involved in the design, so we all feel really proud of our spots, whether they're skate parks or street spots. We do really tend to take care of them.
For instance, we just got Kilchena Park built, and it's the first skate park built on the west side of Vancouver. So it kind of made history in this city.
And again, to give people that sense of ownership, like, hey, we were involved in the design of this is our place, it gives people much more of a connection to their city.
the Skateboard Coalition set the stage, I think, an example for other communities to get themselves organized.
Before, there was no real skate park getting built. It was a bunch of guys just working away in the night, building random obstacles. Now, within the next few months, we should have a real skate park.
I've always heard rumors, you know, growing up, okay, yeah, you know, these so-and-so is going to get a skate park built or something, and they would almost just go and ask for a skateboard park to be built, and then, you know, they didn't really put any research, didn't put any effort into it, nothing like that. Normally they would get turned away because they didn't come prepared, and people got quite discouraged like this, saying, you know, oh, the city doesn't care about skateboarders, stuff like that.
We're telling groups that you have to help yourself if you're going to get anything from HRM. We have to have a sense that you know, you're willing to put some sweat equity into the process yourself, and it's just not going to be dealt to you, I guess, on a silver platter in that regard. So I think the skate community is taking heed to that.
I got involved in the skate park in Beaverbank through my son, Wesley, who is an avid skateboarder.
I just asked my mom what would it take to get a skate park in Beaverbank. She said, well, Wesley, let's make a few phone calls.
We made some phone calls and kind of got the ball rolling. We've been working with Darren Hurdle from HRM, from the Recreation Department.
Well, I think this process brings community together because you have youth and adults working together on a project, again, where they may never have interacted before. You would have adults making decisions for youth. You would have youth getting together wishing that they would have this. But when you have everyone coming together around one project, they get to share each other's views of opinion, see where they're coming from, and they learn from that.
The role of the kids, they are coming up with the ideas to fundraise. They're, you know, they are the ones that see the final product.
It's really easy to lose that youth demographic, and I'm talking the sort of 13 to 18-year-olds. And for them to feel marginalized?
Youth who get involved in projects and in the community early in their life tend to become great community contributors as they turn into adults and live in those communities.
My primary interest in skateboarding would probably be the fact that, you know, my kids skateboard. There's a real lack of facility in Halifax in terms of a good facility compared to what other communities have across Canada, well, and around the world now, actually. I arranged a public meeting at the library for anybody who wanted to come by, and you know, we decided, you know, yes, there's enough of us to try and create some kind of a focus. What's our focus going to be? Is it an indoor park? Is it an outdoor park? We started fundraising. We put a corporate proposal package together, presented to the city council.
We need to raise, you know, about $500,000 for the skate park, and without the city's involvement, you know, we're not as likely to get that funding from the corporate sponsors, and we needed the city itself to throw in quite a bit of change.
Our primary contact with the city has been a gentleman by the name of Blair Blakeney, who has really come on board this. I mean, he's essentially said that this is the priority project for his department.
I think what we've all brought to the table over the last number of years in terms of building this is a sense of respect for one another and what we have to do to bring a facility and a dream to fruition.
I think the fact that the city has stepped up and shown support for these kids and for what they're doing and for what they want to do is going to have a tremendous impact down the road. I think it's saying, hey, you know, we value you. You may not fit what we think is our sort of traditional role for kids, you know, playing on a sport team or whatever, but what we see what you're doing as proactive and a positive thing, and we want to encourage you to stay active.
Sometimes when I walk down the street, and see a tree standing alone. I wonder how it was when there was many. I also wonder how it was for the Coast Salish people, and what their experience was as their land became more and more occupied with foreign people and numerous buildings. Kitsilano was a thriving village before, but now it's an isolated beach amidst a bustling city. The same with Stanley Park. There used to be longhouses. People used to harvest shellfish. Now look at those places, high-traffic tourist areas and prime retail locations.
This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by.
In Vancouver, there are natives from many territories. However, Vancouver is unique in the way that there are First Nation reserves within the city limits, such as the Burrard, Capilano, and Musqueam reserves.
Oh, it's changed. It's changed a lot. I grew up in Ostlahan, which is down the road from here, and my early days were fishing. I mean, the salmon were running, through our creeks in those days.
The beach was really nice. We'd go down there on Sunday and have a picnic on the waterfront and bake clams and cook crabs and that. Now we can't. It's all contaminated.
But we used to have, all the kids, we used to have trails that were back there, and they called it the pit. It was like a big maze. It just went everywhere. There used to be a creek back there and a small little lagoon, and this all got torn down for houses, and it's still being developed for housing.
For many Native people, the process of urbanization is closely linked to that of colonization. Not only has there been an attempt to assimilate Native people in the form of cultural genocide, but urban settings have created a sense of disconnection to the land, which is closely linked to our traditions and spiritual practices.
With the city here, growing up in this city, and I see it with a lot of my friends and family, it's almost as if it's put this like spiritual filter on us. Because we're in the concrete jungle, and it's the spiritual connection to the land is a lot harder to do when you're inside a place with concrete everywhere, and roads and airplanes and fire trucks and ambulance and helicopters.
A lot of indigenous populations were colonized, they were silenced, they were told not to speak their languages and not to communicate in the ways that they traditionally did, which was through their gathering spaces and through their storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And so people have been censored and pushed in through residential schools, trying to learn ways that were not their own.
It's hard out there, it's really hard, and it's especially, when you don't have a foundation of your identity or where you come from. I think it's too easy for, young Aboriginal people to slip through the cracks, and so that's what ended up happening, that's what happened to me. I slipped through the cracks a little bit.
But it's hard. It's hard being a Native organization in the city. I mean, we're in the downtown core. We've got an alley right next to Redwire where people are shooting up and using drugs and yelling and feeling a lot of pain, And we're not used to, personally, I'm not used to working and living in a concrete space, and it's hard to be so far away from your own culture and open space and trees and clean water and stuff like that, and I think sometimes it's really easy to get ungrounded.
In many cities across Turtle Island, First Nations peoples have relocated to urban settings for social and economic reasons.
And also one of the things too with a lot of the families moving into the city, they were moving because of services. They didn't have services on their reserves, so in order to get better education or medical services, they moved into Vancouver and got totally lost in in the area.
We get a lot of letters and a lot of feedback of people that are just so heartened when they pick up Redwire. They're like, oh my God, I'm not alone. You know, other people feel the same way that I do, and I'm not in the corner of some city somewhere thinking that I'm the only one facing these things. Other people are feeling this way too.
Unlike in the past when our cultures and spiritual practices were prohibited, Indigenous people have begun to reclaim their identity and express their cultures in diverse and different ways.
I think the culture has a lot to do with keeping us more satisfied with who we are, and that's very important. If we're not happy with who we are, then we have a tendency to go off and try to be something else.
But when I finally snapped out of it, right, and decided that, you know, whatever drinking and partying or whatever wasn't for me anymore. And so whatever, I got help, right, and I just refocused, you know, on my own life. And this was always there for me. And it was, you know, it's in my family, there's maybe 5 or 6 really, really awesome carvers, right? And so I had a base of a foundation to work from too.
My own family, we put on our own ceremonies, our own burnings, our own namings or feasts, celebrations. Just getting together like that because our family was so important, those things again make me feel more connected to what we are.
Not only are people individually creating spaces for traditional and cultural expressions, Native youth are now directly involved in programming. The Knowledgeable Aboriginal Youth Association has been on the scene since 2002. They have been involved in various community initiatives dealing with youth engagement, as well as hosting many other cultural and community events. Redwire Native Youth Media Society has been involved in community organizing since 1997 and is the first Native youth magazine to be published and distributed nationally.
Redwire Native Youth Media Society is a community of young Native people, mostly in Vancouver, but we have other people that we work with outside of here that are interested in creating a space that is uncensored to talk about a variety of things that affect Aboriginal youth. So mostly what we do is we put out a quarterly magazine with all Native youth artists and all Native youth writers. And we try to promote self-expression because we believe that with our stories and the way that we communicate with each other, that we can build healthier lives for ourselves if we can be honest, instead of being like in a lot of other media sources where things are censored and things are portrayed through stereotypes. We try to break those down and create something that is realistic to us, that is actually the way that we see the world.
Our dance group name is Spakwasslolum in the Squamish language, translated Eagle Song Dancers. Our mission is to present our culture and to bring awareness that we're alive and well and our culture is active.
That indeed we shall convey to the world that our people are still alive and well.
It is definitely a safe haven for me, I guess. To have a space to, you know, practice my culture.
It's being part of freedom. It's being part of like the freedom to speak however you feel and whatever you want. And I think initially, when I got involved, I found that kind of frightening. And I think a lot of people do. It's like they've never been given just free space to say however they feel, however they want. And because we have this history of being told that the way that we feel is wrong, or that it's not it's savage, or it's inferior way of viewing the world, that it's almost like this barrier you get beyond because you're paving your own way. It's like this total black void. You've never explored that part of you before. But it's exciting and it's so rewarding. Just thinking about the blank page of the stuff that we create, and we just do it as we go, and we say however we're feeling and just have faith that other people are feeling the same way too.
This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by. This is how I make the days roll by.
Who are you? What are you good at? What do you like to do? What is your community? Who and what are the people and places important to you? These are the questions we explore with the personal mapping activity. This activity is centered around a visual image or metaphor, like a person or a medicine wheel, whatever makes sense and is relevant for the people participating. Then participants add words or other pictures that represent their experience. This is what makes up a map. The map offers an opening for people to share stories about themselves and their communities in a creative way.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a figure or anything that you guys think it will represent you on paper. And inside we're gonna write all of our assets, all of the things that you're really good at. We're gonna write the people that are important to you in your life and the places that you visit a lot, the places that mean something to you in the city. What we're gonna do now is each one of us is gonna explain their maps.
The back people here is like shadow. They will be like my relatives that even though they're far away, like they're still with me in one way. They're like the people, well, that I love or care, stuff like that.
I really like the human body. I think it's so interesting, and so anything to do with moving your body around I really enjoy, and I still hang out with all my old friends, and I think friendship's really important.
The personal asset mapping activity never unfolds the same way twice. That's part of the beauty and challenge of it. Although there is no one way of doing things, we do have some basic tips to offer. Assure participants there is no right or wrong way to make the maps. Don't be too serious. The idea is to create a relaxed and fun atmosphere so that people feel supported to share.
What happened if I let it? If it doesn't, I'll forget it in the end. And so I try to bend, stay flexible. I'm in this for the long haul. Then I'm in control when I choose to begin. You can't hide behind the mask you've been living in. And you will find that you've been given a chance to design the patterns that paint the path to define your destiny. You can't hide behind the mask you've been living in. And you will find that you've been given a chance to design the patterns that paint the path to define your destiny. Now I've seen a lot of things, been a lot of places, forgotten all the names, remember all the faces, cried the same tears I've seen in different eyes, looking at
Basically what we're going to do with these blocks today is we're going to be identifying some issues and drawing on all of our own strengths and identifying some resources which we can use in the community and around us to be able to take action and maybe even create a little bit of change. So what I've got here is a rubber chicken. We usually carry a rubber chicken with us wherever we go. There's some kind of magical power that whoever's holding the rubber chicken, nobody else is able to speak at that point. I'm going to start to think about What's an issue that you face in your community? What's something you'd like to see resolved? What's a general setback?
I don't like the fact that there's hardly any recreation for teens and youth.
What do you guys think about this tower as is? If this represents our community, what is this looking like?
Not very small.
Small?
Not strong.
It's not strong? So what we're going to do in our next step is that we're going to begin to look at resources and allies and our own personal strengths as well. But basically, what's in the community?
There's good people in my community. We got activists out there, we got good speakers out there. We got people that just want to help you do good in school.
You need someone to look up to. If you don't look up to nobody, you can't look up to yourself. Because if you just look up to yourself, you ain't going to simply get nowhere.
Going to the government, see if there's any kind of grants or anything.
So if this is our tower now that we've identified some resources, if this is our community, what's it saying now? How does it look? Is it looking...
It's stronger.
Yeah?
Still got some holes.
What can we as individuals do now that we've identified some resources?
Start writing letters to the government. We got a new one. Let's see how good they can work.
Be a role model for the kids, go down to the library and just help them out, right?
Most people I know don't vote, like including my mom's friends, like people my age, like it's kinda, I think it's a little scary, like I mean it's the one thing you can do. Alright, this one's for voting.
Bring their phone off the hook. Workshops.
Open up something different for the young one. Go more like in your community.
Fun. These are all things that you guys have said that you can actually very easily do. And a lot of it comes down to just being there. So where do you guys want to go from here with this?
After this, I think that I'm more aware that steps are probably more easier than to take than what we think.
What are children and young people's perspectives of their cities? Are their views reflected in the running, planning, and design of where we live? How can we more effectively support children and young people? What is happening in cities across Canada? This has been the focus of Growing Up in Cities Canada, an initiative that brought together 6 agencies across the country from 2003 to 2006 with funding from the Social Development Directorate. The International Institute for Child Rights and Development, based at the University of Victoria, as the lead organization, we have guided a dialogue seeking to learn from and enhance the networks of young people and other actors in the city. Heartwood in Nova Scotia, Environmental Youth Alliance in Vancouver, Redwire in Vancouver as well, all work directly with youth. The Youth Commission in Gatineau is a formal structure based in the city. The Canadian Commission of UNESCO is an international agency. We've all worked together to move forward the agenda of young people. The Growing Up in Cities Canada initiative originates from a planner, Kevin Lynch, who in the 1970s introduced the idea in 4 cities around the world that children have their own perspectives and need to actively be involved in the design and planning of where they live. Louise Chowler revived these ideas in the mid-90s under the auspices of UNESCO. In 8 cities, Growing Up in Cities involved young people between 10 and 14 years old in evaluating their community, determining priorities for change, and helping implement local initiatives. In an era where greater recognition is made of children's rights, Growing Up in Cities has been a success. It is the Growing Up in Cities approach that gave us a basis to come together in Canada, a framework to build on. It made sense in furthering our implementation of child and youth participation. What have we done? We've created resources and tools. Working with young people requires appropriate tools. Drawing from the international project and the partnering organization's own work, we fine-tuned 4 research methods. Asset-based mapping provides an open space for young people to define what matters to them in terms of their internal selves and their physical and social environment. visioning, allows young people to imagine their ideal city, shedding light on children's perspectives and visions of a healthy community supportive of young people. Photo framing is about young people walking through the community and taking pictures of the places that they like or dislike, the places where they feel safe or unsafe. The Jenga activity focuses on identifying issues of concern to young people, how they perceive their own capacity and the community's capacity to address the issues. The Creative Tool Manual describes these activities in detail. We've also made videos that shed light on young people's creativity. We have told stories, such as the parallel experiences of being queer in Vancouver and of being a new immigrant, and the significance of peer-to-peer support, the meaning of urbanization for Aboriginal children and youth, and the need to redefine their culture in this new setting, the value of skateboarding as a way for young people of connecting physically and socially to their city, an individual activity, but also a potential entry point for young people's engagement in their community and understanding of city processes. The planning and design of a cafe for 12 to 17-year-olds, a place where they can play music, express themselves, where they feel welcome. We've also increased our understanding. We carried out 30 focus groups where young people commonly spoke about feeling excluded, being stereotyped as troublemakers, and feeling that their voice was not valued. But we also learned about the significance of connecting young people at the local level, the various supports that can facilitate young people's civic engagement. We designed and distributed a survey to understand how municipalities in British Columbia engage children and young people. We found that many municipalities have implemented programs of engagement, but only a little over a half report that their community is doing good or very good in including youth in municipal affairs. In fact, 94% believe that their community could be more child and youth friendly. We've also done case studies on how these different cities have approached youth engagement, whether it be in Vancouver, the third largest city in Canada, with a high population and ethnically extremely diverse, in Gatineau, in Quebec, which is somewhat of a spread out suburb recently amalgamated with a large youth population, in Halifax, in the Maritimes, a city that has both aspects of a city and a rural area. Each of these cities has taken their own approach to engaging young people. We've also strengthened and created networks. In fact, networks may be the biggest success of this initiative. When new links have been made, new partnerships established to create a basis for an enabling environment that can sustain the engagement of young people. And finally, we've been advocates. We've attended meetings. We have held local meetings. We've had national public forums to share our learnings, but also invite dialogue amongst municipalities so that cities can learn about the models and approaches adopted by their neighbors, as well as sharing amongst organizations, youth-led ones or those working with young people. We want to encourage the multiple players to push the boundaries and truly provide a meaningful place for young people. With the growing complexity of cities in the new millennium, we urgently need to continue this work. Children have a right to a voice in matters that concern them, as stated in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 12, but also because we have learned that young people are experts on their local environment and a powerful resource for social change. Providing for the civic engagement of young people is about nurturing the roots of our cities, of our society.